My first lesson here is that I should not use an idiom in the title that doesn't translate well. So, yes, writing your idea on the back of a napkin and then, trying to do something with it. I'm very pleased to be speaking with you. For anyone who may have heard me talk about this in Nancy, I know that there are one or two of you. Don't spoil the ending for everyone else. It's a big surprise. Don't spoil it. Okay. Let's see. I'm here from NIOSH. The presentation here, these ideas are my own. So if they're bad, don't hold my organization accountable for that. I am, as mentioned, at NIOSH, which is part of the Center for Disease Control and Prevention in the United States. And I'm coming to you from fabulous Cincinnati, Ohio, which, as you were wondering, is right there. My laboratory there in Cincinnati, we do research on a broad spectrum of workplace safety and health topics. And my job there is to move some of those pieces of research that we do from the lab report or from the journal article and try and get them either communicated or, if it's a technology, into the actual hands of workers. And I've been doing this for a little while, and I don't mean to brag about this, but I'm very, very good at it. And the way that I know, you don't laugh at that. The way that I know that I'm doing a very good job is because, like they do with all famous, really excellent NIOSH employees, they made a doll of me. And so, yeah, I have my own doll. You can laugh at that, that's okay. Okay, so I wanted to share with you a few ideas today about innovation. How it happens, and how to make the most of it. And I'm going to start by telling you a story about innovation. This is my colleague, Steve, and this is a photograph of him. He really is that thin. He's just a thin guy. But he started a study where he was looking at a shipbuilding facility. And he was particularly interested in the welders there. He had been going through some data, and he found in the data that these shipbuilders, in particular, were hurting their knees. And so he knew that, and so he went on site and he watched them work because he wanted to see how they were hurting their knees. He saw that they wore knee pads, which protect the front of their knees. So, as he watched them work, he saw that they would carry their equipment. And then they would kneel down and they would weld, and then they'd stand back up and walk to the next place. But as they were kneeling down, they would kneel and they would flex the backs of their knees. And they would do this over and over. And he said, that's it. That's what I'm seeing in the data. It's not the fronts of the knees, it's how they're flexing the backs of their knees. So at this point, he had located the cause of the problem, and now he needed to come up with a solution. So he decided that he was going to look for existing products that might help. He looked at a variety of chairs and stools, but none of these really were conducive to that job environment. You'd have to carry them around. A lot of them were made of materials that would light on fire, which is terrible if you're welding. So next he turned to baseball, and he found these foam pads that a catcher would wear. And so he tried these, but he found that those were really useful if you're squatting like a catcher, but not if you're kneeling like a welder. In the end, he couldn't find anything that was going to help these welders, and so he decided that he would need to invent something. So he put together a team and started working on designs. They wanted to make something that could be portable, that could be worn on the body, that was small enough, that was not cumbersome, that wouldn't light on fire. So they came up with he and his team came up with several prototypes, and they tested these with some folks in a union. They checked with some people at the university to test their designs, and when they had a good design, they patented it. And then they found a manufacturer who fabricated a few of these, and so I want you to close your eyes and think of Steve's problem and what you would have done, what you would have invented. Okay, you got it. You got it in your head, the thing that you would have made. Did it look like this? It is exactly what it looked like. This is precisely what you were picturing. So, I have this here with me. I am going to demonstrate this product. Yes. So get ready. Those of you on the front have the best view. Okay, this is Velcro. Leave it right here for you to think about or something. Okay, so as you see, or I guess I should say, it will not surprise you that this is not currently in stores. and I don't mean anything negative by that, because it is really a good invention. It's a clever idea. But we can see that there's some problems with it. It is lacking something. So, and actually I brought it home, and my son was very excited to see it. It turns out you can do all sorts of things with it. So hopefully throughout the rest of this presentation, we can come to terms with maybe some of the things that we could have done. And as I started this, I'm guessing you were all thinking, oh, he's going to tell us about this invention that was great, and it's going to make us all feel bad. Just like when you go on Facebook and you see that all your friends are doing wonderful things and that they're all, having great vacations and they're happy and whatever. No, this is not Facebook. We can all wallow in misery together. This thing did not work. So, with innovation, okay. Let's see. Everett M. Rogers had a nice definition of innovation, where he says, if the idea, if the idea seems new to the individual, it is an innovation. Which I like that it doesn't necessarily have to be a new thing. It just has to be new to the people that are using it. And then I have my own thought to add to this, and that is an innovation solves a problem. That's an important component. Okay, so my friend Steve, he designed this nail set to solve a problem with welders. And in his case, he came up with a novel solution. However, innovations don't always have to be a novel solution. They can be reusing an existing thing in a new way. And in 1915, Edward Bullard went into business with his father, and he was making mining equipment. He left Hoboken, New Jersey, to fight in World War I. And when he returned, the United States government approached Bullard's company to solve a major safety problem that they had seen in several industries because of Bullard's experience with miners. They had noted that in many industries there were problems with head injuries, and so, for example, again in shipbuilding, you would have a thing where these workers would heat up rivets, so they're glowing hot red, and then they would take the rivets and they would throw them into a bucket for an apprentice. And now, if you have a hot rivet flying through the air, a lot of things can go wrong with that. And so Bullard, in addressing this problem, he remembered his experience in the war, and he decided that he was going to use a helmet, right? And so he fashioned a new model based on the one that he had worn, and he called it the hard-boiled hat. And now, 100 years later, it's the hard hat, and it's everywhere. Everyone uses hard hats. So there was nothing new about helmets at this point. However, this was still a very important innovation, using an old or existing thing in a new way. So innovations come in two main flavors, sustaining and disruptive innovations. According to Christensen, he says, sustaining technologies improve the performance of an established product. They already have a base of paying customers. Disruptive technologies usually underperform existing products, but are typically cheaper, simpler, smaller, or more convenient to use. Okay, so I guess a sustaining innovation, that's something that often will appeal to a larger company, and disruptive innovations tend to be the domain of smaller companies. So an example of a sustaining innovation here, the bike helmet, there's maybe a change in the materials, the form a little bit, but not in how the product is used. And so, of course, this to this is a sustaining innovation. And this is my dog wearing a bike helmet, which is a great innovation. But the great thing here, my dog doesn't even have a bicycle. So, what's he doing? Now, this and this, these are both disruptive innovations because the people using them have to adopt a new behavior, a new way of doing things. Okay, so Clayton Christensen, who I just quoted, he did a tremendous amount of research in the disk drive industry, and he found that established companies were great at developing sustaining innovations. They heard from their established customers, and then they would incrementally improve their products based on that customer feedback with wonderful results. And then they knew that at the end of that development cycle, they would have some high-paying customers ready to buy exactly what they had built. Now, a disruptive technology, it requires a new infrastructure and new customer behaviors. So when these are invented, they don't have any customers. And generally, the only companies that are willing or able to pursue these types of innovations are ones that are happy just making a very small order, not making very much money off of it at first. They're a little more open to the risk. So why do you care about sustaining versus disruptive? Well, one of the reasons is because of the innovation life cycle. And the innovation life cycle looks something like this. On one end, we have early adopters and innovators, and they are folks who embrace new technologies. And then we see this gap here. Glad to have a laser. That was fun. We see this gap, and it's a dangerous zone where many new technologies and products that are promising, they fall, and they never reach mainstream markets. Jeffrey Moore the guy who kind of proposed some of this, he calls it the chasm. All right, and then on the other side of the chasm, we have the early majority, the late majority, and laggards who are in various stages of being willing to try new things, to adopt new technologies. But really, this is the mainstream market. That's where most of the money is. And so in this case, over here on the right-hand side, this is a place where risk is a good thing. It's an exciting thing. It's valuable. And over here, risk is a bad thing. It's a little too scary. So I started with the NIOSH, which is a good idea that fell into the chasm. The inventor, Steve, he looked at some existing technology to solve his problem. That would have been a sustaining technology. Instead, he designed his own solution, which requires a new behavior, that is, people strapping a chair to their leg. And so that's a disruptive solution. A lot of people over here were excited about Steve's technology. And a lot of people over here, not so much. They were a little bit more worried about it. So for all of you, what is your organization best at? Are you good at those incremental, sustaining innovations? Are you better at more disruptive style innovations that shake up an industry? Okay, so to answer that question, it's useful to think about where innovation comes from in your organization. According to Michael Porter at the Harvard Business School, every organization somehow takes an input and transforms it and then creates an output. And in the process, they add value. So no matter what your organization does, your job is to add value, which can be a very empowering message to know that everyone within an organization can innovate and add something to your organization's output. Porter calls this All right, sorry, my smoothie is done. I apologize for that. I get in the middle of these things and I need some wheatgrass. So that's right. And I will do it again if I see you drifting. So good, and that's okay because this is the boring part anyway. With Porter's value chain, you're like, oh my word, did he learn this in school? I did, and you're in the classroom with me now. So Porter, he divides organizations into primary activities and support activities, and every one of these areas can contribute to the value that the organization creates. And as they do, they add value and they establish the organization's competitive position. The value that we create within our organizations is the margin here. That's the sum total of what you added to the inputs. So in my story, Steve's work definitely added value, and that was the margin. NIOSH did exactly what it was designed to do. But the NIOSH still fell into the chasm. And this suggests that there's more to innovation than a single company. Whether it's sustaining or disruptive, we need more than just our own organizations. Luckily, there's an entire ecosystem of complementary agencies, businesses, unions, customers, and universities in the world of occupational safety and health. Clayton Christensen calls this a value network. He says, value networks provide the context within which a firm identifies and responds to customers' needs, solves problems, procures input, reacts to competitors, and strives for profit. Okay, so the value network is different from from a supply chain that's more linear and it focuses on financial transactions. According to VERNA ALLEE, direct revenue exchanges are only part of the picture. Knowledge and intangible value are of equal importance, and success depends on building a rich web of trusted relationships. So it looks less like this, and it looks more like this. A little bit messier, but you can get a little more out of it. Okay, and a nice thing that this shows us is that you don't have to be good at everything. You only have to be good at something. And the thing that you're good at is your comparative advantage. So understanding your comparative advantage in the value chain helps you define where you can best innovate. It defines your place in your network, and it also gets you into the network in the first place. So the idea of comparative advantage was first introduced by British economist David Ricardo in 1821. And he suggested that a whole network of partners would benefit if they specialized in something and then traded freely among themselves. Now that was 1821, and so I've updated his theory. And I'm far more qualified than David Ricardo to come up with a great theory. And mine is the Ocean's 11 theory, based on the best movie ever made. Now, you're like, I've never seen this movie. This sounds stupid. It is not. It's great. So the Ocean's 11 theory suggests that a functioning value network is composed of parties that understand their comparative advantage, and then they coordinate what they do for mutual gain. Now, to explain a little bit, Ocean's 11 is a heist movie. Okay. You have George Clooney and Brad Pitt, and they bring together 11 thieves to steal money from 3 Las Vegas casinos. It's audacious. Do you want to know the ending? They pull it off. They do it. It's been around for a while, so you should have seen it. So they need all of the skills of the people in their network to pull off their heist. They need the mechanics, they need the security guy, they need the con man, they need the surveillance guy, and they all specialize and come together to form this value network. And so the thing for you to think about is, what's that Ocean's 11 team that you need so you can get your idea into the marketplace? When my buddy Steve invented the Neil sit, he had a lot of important partners involved already. He had part of the team. But he also had a few things that were lacking. Some others could have helped. For example, NIOSH doesn't have industrial design capabilities, which means that this was never going to be comfortable. It wasn't going to be sleek. NIOSH doesn't develop business plans. It doesn't pursue markets or set prices. We don't have any manufacturing capabilities, and we don't do customer relationship management. And so, and that's not really our place. It'd be crazy if we did all those things. But unless we, no, I'm going the wrong way. You're missing so many good slides. Okay, there we go. Unless we do come up with the partners that we need, then all the rest of our ideas are also going to go flying into the chasm. And you're glad you saw that slide. Heaven forbid I would have skipped it. Such a nice picture. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about the competitive environment and to propose that our industry has some unique characteristics that allow us to be more effective without worrying about being as competitive. So in 2004, Kim and Mauborgne proposed an approach to competition that they called Blue Ocean Strategy. Okay, and their idea is all about circumventing competition by entering new product categories. A space without competition is, according to them, a blue ocean. And they say, competing in overcrowded industries is no way to sustain high performance. The real opportunity is to create blue oceans of uncontested market space. So one way to uncontested market space is through a disruptive innovation. Kim and Mauborgne share the blue ocean successes of Cirque du Soleil, which, that's exciting. It's a pile of weird people in Lycra. And they talk about the Chrysler minivan as well as a blue ocean success. However, unfortunately, they also talk about red oceans. And I guess it's red because it's full of blood or something heinous. And so these are full of vicious competitors who are out to get you. And ultimately, they say that no ocean stays blue forever. Someone's going to attack in that space. And Chrysler, again, is a good example. They invented the minivan in 1984 and were really successful with it. And then by the next year, all the other car companies were scrambling and had created minivans and had invaded that blue ocean. So I'd like to propose that in the occupational safety and health community, we can avoid red oceans and blue oceans altogether. And to do this, we need to think about what our comparative advantage is and figure out how to contribute within a value network. Thanks to our unique blend of government agencies, universities, insurers, labor unions, for-profit companies, safety-conscious consumers, we have this strong united goal of worker safety that gives us a nice ecosystem within which we can work. So I got a little experience of this while I was trying to transfer a technology that we developed at NIOSH. We had put together a hearing loss solution in one of our labs, and we called it, it's a software package that measures how much sound a pair of earplugs is blocking. We call it the HPD WellFit system. So you sit at your computer, you put on headphones, and you click when you can't hear a noise anymore or a certain tone anymore. And then you put in earplugs, and then you run the test again. And you subtract the first or the second score from the first, and there you go. You find out how much attenuation your earplugs have, which, it's great. NIOSH licensed this software to an acoustic laboratory, which currently sells a version of it. And in case, again, you were thinking, oh man, this is probably a runaway success. Well, not really. It hasn't necessarily gone anywhere. So again, I am not like Facebook. I'm not bragging to you. So we did not have a hit in the end, and we did not fix the problem of hearing loss with this, which again doesn't mean it wasn't a good idea, because it was. But it gave me a nice opportunity to think about that OSH ocean and say, we probably need to take a dive into this. And that's the story that I'm going to finish with, our dive into the OSH ocean. So it's a story about what we learned last year when we decided to stage a hearing loss prevention event. And that started when I made a friend at the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA. I met with a friend named Kelly, and again, she's also quite thin. And as you're starting to notice, everyone in the United States, we're kind of famous for being thin. So it's just how we are. Glad you laughed at that. So with Kelly, we were both working on a different project, and we started talking about hearing loss, and we said, we're having a hard time kind of transferring our technologies. We're coming up with really good technologies that are getting adopted in the workplace. And we thought maybe we can engage the entrepreneurial community, the small businesses that are already hacking away at this problem. And so since we both cared about this, we said, let's do a challenge. Let's invite people to share the solutions that they already have. So we plan to hold a two-agency event. We would post our challenge on a website, challenge.gov, and then we'd kind of promote it. And then we would get submissions, and we would pick our 10 favorite ideas. We would invite them all to come to Washington, D.C., and to share in front of a panel of judges their great ideas and technologies. And then the judges would pick their favorites, and then they would announce a winner, and the winner would get, and we kind of just sat there and we were like, what does the winner get? Because we didn't have any money. We were broke. And so we didn't just lack money for a prize. We didn't have any money for anything. Because, well, you know, we're government agencies, I guess. But we decided to do this anyway, because why not? So we went ahead and we went with this. We started by making friends, basically. We made friends with people at another government agency, and they let us use their building for the event. They had a nice auditorium. And then we went around and we found judges. We talked to people in the entrepreneurial community. There were lots of folks that were kind of startup support type organizations, incubators, and things like that. So we talked to these to folks in the entrepreneurial community. We talked to some venture capitalists and said, hey, we're doing this thing. Would you like to come and see it? Would you like to help judge? We talked to some friends at universities who were experts in audiology. And in the end, we even found someone who was willing to plan an after party for us for free, which was great. So I was pretty happy that we managed to kind of get a lot of that put together. But then we thought, now, is anyone going to actually come to this? We have it organized. Will anyone show up if we pick them and they realize that there's no prize money? They have to pay their own way, all that. So we tried to come up with how we would entice them, and we said, okay, we'll have potential investors there. We'll have, they could meet people from the government, which, I mean, it seems like a pretty good reward. We had someone from the patent office there that, okay, they can maybe explain and help with any patent issues. But regardless, we published our challenge, and we gave people 2 months to submit their ideas, and then we just waited for those submissions to pour in. So after 1 month, we only had 7 submissions, and we were a little worried, and we started coming up with an alternative plan in case we didn't get any good ideas. Like, maybe we just hide it and pretend it never happened. But luckily, by the end of the 2nd month, we had plenty of submissions, which was a great relief. And we went through and we picked our 10 favorite, and we invited them to Washington, D.C. Now, they all came. Okay, so they all came, and the event went pretty well. It went just fine. Our judges picked the winners, and then afterwards we had a great party. And then after that, we kind of shared the results with the world at large. A few weeks later, I did a follow-up call with our finalists because I wanted to get some feedback from them. I was very curious, particularly if they felt like doing this had been worthwhile for them. Especially since they didn't get any money. So I asked them, you didn't get any money, do you wish that you had not done this? And I was surprised at the answers that I got because they helped let me know what my organization's spot in the value network was. And it turns out it wasn't money, thank heavens. They said a few things. They said, we're not a giant company, so an award from OSHA and NIOSH is meaningful. Said being selected was a huge boost to our credibility. The press releases provided leads, including paying clients. Since the challenge, we've sold out of product. For early stage companies, the validation is huge. It was really great meeting these other companies. We've stayed in touch with each other. To get that many government players, I don't know what that means exactly, but I think it means I'm a playa, which I accept. To get that many government players into one room would have taken us a year and cost about $100,000. So here we have 2 government agencies that came together to share their lab and their staff resources. And then another agency let us use their building. We had 10 inventors who showed up with different ideas, and then they shared freely. We had some investors and small business support organizations come. We had OSH professional organizations that took note and shared the stories of these inventors and their technologies with their communities, helped disseminate. We had big companies who took interest in these startups and started buying things from them. So through this experience, it helped me realize what my organization could add to the OSHA. And luckily, it wasn't money, because again, we didn't have any. So a few of the other things that we were told was that we were valuable because we were able to connect different groups that cared about safety. We were valuable because we could recognize companies that were bad at safety, and those are all potential customers for companies that help increase your ability to be safe. We have good labs and tools and scientists that we can share. So, with all of that, I'll finish up now. I have five points that I'll run through quickly that is kind of my takeaway on how you can put yourself in that kind of friendly OSH ocean. So the first thing is to identify what you do well. At my agency, we do high quality research and we're good at finding scientific consensus. Next, decide what resources you can contribute. For us, we can bring attention to workplace hazards. We can give validation to others. We can share our labs and our equipment. We can provide access to our scientists. Third, encourage each functional area in your organization's value chain to innovate. For example, if our human resources department hires better people, then we win. If our procurement gets better deals on the equipment, then we can move some of that money to where it makes more of an impact in our research. Fourth, notice what you don't do well. So with our HPD WellFit hearing protection system, it used good science, but it was only an okay product compared to the really neat things that the entrepreneurs were doing that we invited to our event. And with the NIOSH, there were all sorts of things that we didn't have to make this an amazing product. We don't have factories, we don't have direct access to capital or a sales force, we don't have shipping services or a lot of things really. And that leads to number 5. That is, build relationships within your network with organizations that do have those things. And if you have sustaining innovations that you create, those relationships and organizations will probably be different than if you're working more with disruptive innovations. Okay, so my summary here comes from a very wise philosopher who said, if you want to move an innovation from the back of the napkin to the hands of workers, know yourself and make more friends. And so I'll advise or say that this is exactly the type of experience, this Parash meeting, where we get to meet each other, we get to feed off of each other's experience, we get to build these networks and these relationships. And so I very much appreciate being invited here, and it has been absolutely a pleasure to speak to you and to meet so many of you. So thank you very much for your kind attention.